some of what Reverend Wilson was talking about in terms of the flowery language we're going to hear compared to what we know is the truth. Long a black majority, the District of Columbia is no stranger to the impacts of continued systemic racism in this country. These systems, codified by government-sanctioned policies and practice, have played a significant and lasting role in the status of black residents in D.C.
That's right.
The fact that we are currently living in one of the most racially segregated cities with one of the largest wage gaps between races is not by accident, but rather by design.
That's right.
As the government has been instrumental to the creation of a society where outcomes are predicted by race and zip code, so must the government do the work of investing in the changes necessary, both to redesign the system and also to make reparation to the residents who have been continuously locked out of the city's newfound prosperity. Sanctuary is defined by Merriam-Webster as a place of refuge and protection. The district lauds itself as a sanctuary city, which on the very basic level means that it is one of several cities across the U.S. that has pledged to have limited cooperation with the federal government's enforcement of racist immigration laws. This is critically important, particularly as so many of our undocumented neighbors and their families are feeling the panic of the xenophobic campaign being waged by 45.
That's right.
And yet, there's something that has been bothering me. As I sit here and watch this city, which through legislation and a lack thereof, decimate entire communities of people, it is clear to me that there is no sanctuary here. Not when my organization sees 20,000 people experiencing crisis, with thousands more qualifying for our services year after year. There is no sanctuary here when there are 40,000 people waiting on a list for housing that they can afford, while this administration presents a budget that has no new money to bring people off of that list and into safe, permanent housing that they can afford. There is no sanctuary here when we underfund our public schools, hyper-police our black and brown residents, and pat ourselves on the back for $100 million a year investments in a $400 million a year problem. No, there is no sanctuary here when the people I build with, organize with, fight for, not so long as billionaires receive blank checks and developers get carte blanche, all the while organizers, folks living on low incomes, advocates and allies must practically beg for crumbs. Truthfully, I had trouble writing this today because I thought I'd run out of things to say. Mayor Bowser knows all the numbers. She knows that there are 40,000 people on the wait list. She knows that in DC, the wage gap between black and white people and between Latinx and white people continues to be the widest in the nation. She knows that we have some of our highest family homeless numbers in years, and that the Housing Authority continues to act as one of the biggest slumlords in the city. She knows that it is unconscionable that she would be exposing the families at DC General, including black children, babies, to lead and asbestos, just so that she can join the race to the bottom that has American cities throwing resources at residents while claiming poor when we come calling for investments in human needs. She knows all of this. And yet we continue to see budgets that pretend as though all residents are enjoying the newfound prosperity in the district. Jeff Bezos doesn't need the city to fund him when he is worth 9 times our city's entire budget. DC will never be safer or stronger so long as the city continues to spend 3 times as much on policing and incarcerating black and brown people than they do to make sure that we have safe, healthy housing that we can afford. This city cannot claim to care about black women and girls when black women in DC are the only ones included in the maternal mortality rate, and when black babies like Relisha Rudd are forgotten in the dust and debris of oversized development. And how dare the mayor ever claim DC as the #1 place for African American residents to thrive, so long as black people in DC have the shortest life expectancy in the whole entire country. If Mayor Bowser wants to say she cares about black and brown residents, then it's time for her to put her money where her mouth is. Her FY19 budget must include $339 million to provide at least 2,600 units of housing just in FY19 for people living on extremely low incomes. It must include money for a daytime service center, public restrooms, because our homeless neighbors deserve respect and to live a dignified life. It must include money to fully fund and implement the NEAR Act so that we can start treating crime like the public health issue that it is. And it must include money for permanent supportive housing, emergency rental assistance, and for each and every one of the asks laid out on the Fair Budget Coalition's budget platform. This city has been making promises and commitments to longtime residents for as long as we can all remember. And it is past time to make good on those promises by making critical investments in housing and other services for folks living at the lowest income levels. The people who live in these communities are just that, people, humans, families, and communities. We all want the same things that any of them would want in there. We deserve to live in a safe, healthy, dignified housing we can afford. We have a right to raise our families in the city that we've loved for generations, even at times when the city didn't seem to love us back. We have a right to live here, to love here, to grow here, and certainly we have a right to DC. Thank you.
All right.
Is Brianna here?